Good afternoon, class. So today we are going to be exploring Albert Einstein and his critical thinking process. Along with this, we are going to try and identify what intellectual traits he displays. I am thinking we will start thinking about Einstein's thinking regarding E equal mc squared. Does anyone have any thoughts on this matter?
Well, I think that since Albert Einstein's original interest in creating the equation E equals mc squared was intrigued by learning materials from other researchers, he was aware he wasn't knowledgeable in those areas, which is why he was interested in learning what they knew. I think this displays intellectual humility. He didn't act as if he knew what anything was about what they had been researching. He simply wanted to learn about them. He knew the limits of his knowledge. After he studied their works and became knowledgeable, he began noticing there were gaps in their works. Something was missing. This is what led him to figuring out the equation of E equals mc squared and how energy, mass, and light were all related.
Good point. I don't know your name, so you probably don't have your 3 Ps, but I would have to agree with that. Einstein learned from the other scientists and then simply elaborated on their thoughts. He was able to review other people's work without bias and figure out how sound, light, and mass were related based on solid evidence. Good. Yes, you.
Well, I believe that throughout Einstein's process of creating E equals mc squared, that he must have demonstrated self-reflection. He obviously didn't wake up one morning and put the equation together. He had to do research and reflect on his thinking about what he was coming up with so he could move forward. Since he initially was learning from other scientists, he had to have been able to review their work without bias and truly analyze his own thinking about the subject. He had to be able to reflect as to why he thought it was wrong and determine if there was any solid evidence for it. Being able to do this process is what allowed him to improve on the work he had and finally come up with the product of E equals mc squared.
Yes, very good. Yes, you?
And to piggyback off of what she said, Einstein demonstrated clarity. In order for anyone around him to understand what he was saying or trying to demonstrate, he had to be able to communicate effectively and clearly, otherwise no one would have been able to understand what he was saying. He communicated clearly through mathematics and also through words when meeting other scientists.
I think that he demonstrated accuracy all the time because through his mathematical equations, he always showed how he got the result and had sound evidence to show how he got there.
Yes, you?
His thinking also had purpose behind it. His purpose was to eliminate the gaps that were present from other scientists' explanations. He wanted to understand why there seemed to be gaps in their explanations and determine the relationship between mass, light, and energy.
Yes, those are both good points. You?
Well, I'm going to piggyback off of what she said again. This also demonstrated that he was aware of the assumptions that were present. He had to use the critical thinking process to realize that people were just assuming the theories the scientists were presenting were right, and that they had no real explanation for the holes that were present in the theories. He saw this and was aware of the assumption, and based on his critical thinking processes, he determined that this widely accepted assumption was incorrect. He found he was right, and he was able to determine the relationship between mass, energy, and light.
Right. Well, unfortunately, we are all out of time. But before we go, I would like to leave you with this. All of these things are great examples of his critical thinking process. Einstein was a sound thinker. I encourage you all to practice these thinking skills outside of class. I mean, some of you aren't doing your layups.